If I started intermittent fasting in 2025, I would do this. That's something I'm going to talk about today, so stick around. Hi, my name is Hachiaki Takamiya. I am the author of Live Wiser, Not Smarter. Happy holidays! I suppose you're in a festive mood, but in 1 week it will be 2025. And now is the time to prepare for the next year's health goals. And in the last video, I shared with you how to optimize your health in 2025. But today, I'll focus on fasting, intermittent fasting. There are different types of intermittent fasting, such as 16-hour fast, OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, prolonged fasting, like longer fasting over 24 hours, and early time restricted eating, where you eat early in the day between like 7 to 3 p.m. or between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and so on. So which fasting is good for 2025? Will 2025 be different from other years? Will that affect your fasting practice? That's all I'll be talking about today, so please watch the video until the end. Now, those of you who just discovered this video today for the first time, this is the Ikigai diet channel, which is a health and longevity channel. We usually cover things like diet, exercise, mindset, and sometimes we cover Japanese blue zones because there are several blue zones in Japan other than Okinawa. And we cover from traditional Japanese health method to modern Japanese health trends such as chokatsu. So basically, this is a channel about how to increase health span, especially for people over 50 or over 60. So if you're interested, please subscribe to this channel. Thank you. Now, fasting, intermittent fasting. Many of you practice intermittent fasting for different reasons. Some of you want to lose weight, while others want to increase your health span or lifespan. Now, today, I'll be focusing more on increasing your health span and lifespan and not so much about losing weight. But this video is going to be beneficial for those of you who want to lose weight as well, because many of the things I'll be talking about will be relevant to losing weight too. So 2024 to 2025, there's a big leap in this photo. And in fact, many people predict there's going to be a big leap and 2025 will be a special year. Now, whenever people talk about this, the year predictions and what's going to happen next year and so on, usually they say there's going to be something special, but at the end of the day, you often discover it will be the same as usual. I mean, maybe special for some people, but not special for many of us. In fact, 2024 was a special year for many of us. So what is the difference? Is 2025 more significant than 2024? But that is what many psychics and other people who, predict the future talk about. They say 2025 is going to be special. There will be a massive change and transformation and so on. Probably there will be some natural disasters. There are like an AI revolution, there are kind of spiritual awakening and all kind of things. If that is the case, will those changes affect our health and longevity practice? Now, one thing is certain about 2025 is it is going to be the year of the snake, according to the Chinese zodiac. But it is going to be a little different from usual because the Chinese New Year is going to start in January, not in February like usual. For example, the last year, the year of the dragon started on February 10th. And most Chinese New Year begin somewhere around that time, like, the beginning of February. But in 2025, it is going to be 10 days earlier. So it means almost the entire 2025 will be the year of the snake. The influence of the year of the snake is much stronger than usual pattern. So what does it mean? What is the significance about the year of the snake? Let's look at the year of the dragon. Um, the key words were power, strength, and good fortune. It was all to do with prosperity and success and growth. But in the year of the snake, the focus will be wisdom, transformation, especially spiritual transformation and intuition. So it will be more inward and introspective, and you're kind of looking inward. While the year of the dragon is more kind of outward, like growth and development and so on. So that is one big difference. So wisdom, that is one of the key words. Therefore, you want to live wiser, definitely. And spirituality, because of the spiritual transformation and intuition, that is very spiritual. Now, spirituality has been big for many years now, but one thing many people say about the 2025 is that there will be some new disclosures. There will be some scientific discoveries about spirituality. Those discovery has been happening in the last few years too, but more so in 2025. Probably there will be disclosures about UFOs and extraterrestrial life forms, and there will be some scientific discoveries about soul and other aspect of spirituality. So more and more spirituality and science will be merged, or spirituality will be backed up by some scientific data, which didn't happen so much in the past, even though there are growing population of people who are interested in spirituality. So in 2025, the spirituality will become more official and it will become more mainstream. What does it mean in the field of health and longevity? Now, so what is the purpose of living longer? That was the question I asked in my book, Ikigai Biohacking, because many people who promote lifespan extension or even health span extension, they don't usually talk about spirituality so much. So when people talk about expanding your lifespan, often because the death is the end of everything. Once you lose your body, your existence stop, and no one wants to stop existing. We all want to exist forever. Therefore, we want to prolong our life as long as possible, and we want to expand our lifespan as long as possible. But what if there is existence after death? If the death is not the ending, we will continue to exist in one way or another. We don't know what sort of form, but if there are existence after life, then the question will change completely. We don't need to extend our body to continue to exist. Maybe it's okay to die. Now, many people are not necessarily interested in lifespan extension. They are happy to die at expected age, but people want to increase health span. So health span extension is more kind of popular theme these days. But even that, whether you believe life after death will make a big difference, because so far many people are focusing on the physical health, like try to be sick free or try to be injury free so that you can remain healthy into old age until you die. But once you start believing the possibility of another existence after death, then you want to prepare for it too. You don't want to just stay sick free or injury free, but you want to develop your soul or spirituality so that you'll be in a better position to evolve into the next form. So that is something not so much practice in regular biohacking or health practices, but that is something included in Ikigai biohacking. That is not the main focus, but that is included in Ikigai biohacking. Now, so in that point of view, fasting is very good because fasting is a very good spiritual practice as well as practice for health. So even though fasting may not be optimal in terms of your physical health, maybe there are better ways such as exercise or heat exposure, cold exposure, or diet. Still, fasting is important in terms of spirituality. Therefore, in 2025, regardless of the form of fasting, fasting will become more relevant. All right, so let's examine each fasting. 16-hour fast. This is the most popular form of fasting where you have 2 meals a day and quite often you skip breakfast. How many of you practice intermittent 16 hours fast or have practiced this type of fasting? I have. I used to practice it for about 2 years. Next one is OMAD, 1 meal a day. That means many of you probably skip breakfast, skip lunch, and have dinner. Or sometimes you might just have only breakfast, or you might just have only lunch. That's possible. How many of you practice OMAD or have practiced OMAD? Next one is prolonged fasting. Prolonged fasting is over 24-hour fast. Now, how many of you practice prolonged fasting? And the last one is early time restricted eating, where you eat early in the day, maybe between 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. How many of you practice this type of fasting? So, which style of fasting is good for spirituality? For spirituality, usually prolonged fasting is considered to be beneficial. In fact, in many spiritual traditions, they practice 2 days fasting or 3 days fasting or sometimes even a week fasting. So prolonged fasting is more common for spiritual growth. How about longevity? For longevity, which type of fasting is good? But before that, why is fasting good for longevity? According to Dr. David Sinclair, who is one of the most well-known experts in the field of health and longevity, he thinks that the biggest cause of us developing diseases is that aging. Because of aging, we develop diseases, and he regards aging to be a disease. And by stopping or slowing down aging, we can prevent from developing diseases. And he thinks something what he calls sirtuin is the key. You want to activate sirtuin. By activating sirtuin, you can slow down aging. And intermittent fasting is one of the best ways to activate sirtuin, according to David Sinclair. Have you ever heard of Dr. Yoshinori Osumi, who is a 2016 Nobel Prize winner in physiology or medicine? And he discovered the mechanism of autophagy, which is a cellular recycling mechanism. So cells get older, but this function can regenerate those cells. And autophagy is another keyword in the field of health and longevity. By activating autophagy, it is considered to slow down aging. And here too, intermittent fasting is considered to activate autophagy. However, there are several stages of autophagy activation, and you can, regenerate your cells in so many ways. But to activate autophagy for longevity purposes, to kind of expand your lifespan, often prolonged fasting is considered to be more beneficial. Prolonged fasting meaning 24 hours or longer. So in other words, 16 hours fasting is not sufficient to activate autophagy for longevity. It is better to fast for 24 hours or longer. However, this prolonged fasting has side effect. Now, Dr. Peter Thiel, who is the author of How to Live, he is another expert well known in the field of health and longevity, used to practice 72 hours fasting. In his case, he practiced it quite frequently. He said almost every week. That's a lot of long fasting to do. But one thing he discovered was muscle loss because of protein deficiency. Well, if you practice 72 hours fast every week, that's a lot. I'm not surprised that he lost muscles a lot. And yet, some experts say protein deficiency is a good thing. In fact, when you don't have so much protein intake, then you can activate autophagy more. So in some ways, it is a good thing. However, Peter Attia says that for older people, this is a serious business. The older you get, easier it is to lose muscles. As you get older, you lose muscles more quickly. Therefore, you need to gain more protein. And also the protein synthesis is not as efficient as when you are younger. So you need to pay attention to your protein intake more carefully. You need higher protein intake, and you need to do more strength training to build your muscles. And so that you can prevent falling and things like this, because falling is one of the major causes of death among senior citizens. By falling, you can break your hip bones and then you become bedridden, and then you won't be able to move around. You won't be able to exercise. So eventually, you will develop other diseases, and that can kill you. So falling is one of the biggest causes of death among senior citizens. So you want to protect yourself. You want to have muscle strength, and therefore you need to maintain protein intake. So that means for old people, prolonged fasting isn't good to practice. And also, there is a channel in Japan called Endoscope channel, and those two doctors usually give some medical advice. So Dr. Tetsuro Hirashima and Dr. Motohisa Akiyama, and they say 48 hours fasting is the limit, even if you want to practice prolonged fasting. They say it because, ICU, intensive care unit, there are some patients who cannot eat, and then they practice tube feeding. To do tube feeding, which means you kind of give nutrition through tube directly to your gut, they have a rule that they have to do it within 48 hours. So that means you should not leave a patient's body without any nutrition for longer than 48 hours. So when you practice fasting, if you practice fasting longer than 48 hours, you won't be getting any nutrient during that period. So that means even if you practice prolonged fasting, 48 hours fasting can be the maximum. All right. So what about 16 hours fasting? Maybe we should forget about prolonged fasting, whether it is a 72 hours fasting or 48 hours fasting, just focus on 16 hours fasting, and that will be much safer. Now, so what about the protein business? Does practicing 16 hours fasting create protein deficiency? Now, so how much protein do we need per day? RDA, which is a recommended daily allowance, was 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight and still is. But recently, many experts say this is not sufficient. You need somewhere around 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight or 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight if you are older and if you are active, like exercising a lot. So 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for me, because I weigh 60 kilograms, it is about 48 grams per day. Now, I was basing this data for a long time. In fact, in my last book, Ikigai Biohacking, I was basing on this data. That is why I was practicing 2 meals a day because I thought that was sufficient to meet this protein requirement. But if it is 1.2 grams, then you need 72 grams if you weigh 60 kilograms. And for 1.6 gram, you need 96 grams, which is twice as much as 48 grams. So that's a big difference. So now, if you had only 2 meals a day, you'd have to have 48 grams per meal to meet that requirement. But if you could have 3 meals a day, then you just need 32 grams per meal. Therefore, I decided to switch from 2 meals a day to 3 meals a day because it was easier to meet my protein requirement. And the other thing about 16 hours fasting is quite often you skip breakfast. Many people have lunch and dinner only, not breakfast. It is possible to practice 16 hours fasting by dinner skipping or lunch skipping. But most people skip breakfast because dinner is difficult to skip because it's a social time. It's a time when your family members get together and it is a family bonding time, and which is important for health and longevity too. Those doctors in endoscope channel says breakfast is important. They recommend that you have breakfast because of the circadian rhythm. According to the circadian rhythm, it is better to eat when it is light outside, and it is better to fast when it is dark. Therefore, maybe you can have breakfast, lunch, and you can skip dinner, or you just have, breakfast, lunch, and early dinner. And many experts say it is important to absorb protein before 10 a.m. in the morning. I mean, you don't have to, but they say it is more efficient to absorb protein before 10 a.m. However, protein is controversial. Now, this 0.8 or 1.2 or 1.6, different experts disagree. Some experts say you need 1.6 gram, but other experts say 0.8 gram is sufficient. In fact, they say you don't want to have too much protein. So protein is a controversial topic, and I cannot confidently say that you need 1.6 grams. But then you want to listen to the next part. Dr. Yuji Naito, who is a researcher of Kyotango longevity cohort study. So in Japan, there is an area called Kyotango in Kyoto Prefecture. This is the Kyoto city, but that's a Kyoto Prefecture. And Kyotango is well known in Japan at the moment as a longevity hotspot. because there are 3 times as many centenarians as the Japanese national average. Japan is one of the longest living countries in the world. There are so many centenarians in Japan, but even compared to the Japanese national average, Kyotango has 3 times as many centenarians. And in this Kyotango longevity cohort study, they discovered that a bacteria called butyrate-producing bacteria was abundant in the gut of the centenarians in Kyotango. So this butyrate-producing bacteria is a beneficial bacteria in your gut, just like bifidobacteria, lactic acid bacteria. There are many beneficial bacteria in your gut, but butyrate producing bacteria is one of them. And now this bacteria is in the spotlight. And Dr. Naito says in order to increase butyrate producing bacteria, you need fiber, especially highly fermentable fiber. And he says you want to have it for breakfast because beneficial bacteria will be hungry in the morning after the night fasting because while you're sleeping, you don't eat. Therefore, they don't get to eat anything either. So they're waiting some more new food in the morning. So it's better for the beneficial bacteria if you feed something in the morning. All right. So even though you are skeptical about high protein intake theory, you still need fiber in the morning. So either case, the idea of breakfast skipping may not be a good idea. Now, intermittent fasting can give the gut a break too. So that is another benefit, not only the autophagy activation, but giving your gut a break. Because we eat too much and too often. We eat 3 meals a day, but some of us eat dessert in between and so on, and we're constantly eating, and the gut is constantly at work. We want to give gut a break. How do I do that? If we don't practice intermittent fasting? Well, many experts say you need at least 12 to 14 hours fast, regardless of whether you practice fasting or not. Because even if you eat 3 meals a day, it is possible to give a gut 12 to 14 hours break. Now, if you finish eating at 8 p.m. and if you have breakfast at 8 a.m., then you have 12 hours fasting. And so what about 14 hours fasting? Well, if you finish eating at 7 p.m. and if you have breakfast at 9 a.m., then you have 14 hours fast. Now, so this kind of fasting is recommended by Dr. Sachin Panda, who is a founding executive member of the Center for Circadian Biology at the University of California, San Diego. He is a circadian rhythm expert. He thinks 14 hours is ideal because he doesn't think it's a good idea to eat right after waking up. He thinks that we should give a gut a break at least for 1 hour after waking up, but preferably 2 hours. And then you want to give some hours before going to bed too. So he says 14 hours is ideal. So setting your eating window 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. So now I practice this. What about prolonged fasting then? Because to activate autophagy for longevity, you need to practice prolonged fasting. And for spirituality too, prolonged fasting is more beneficial. Well, you can still practice it from time to time, such as doing it once a year or once every 3 months. If 72 hours fasting is too long, like those doctors says you may want to limit to 48 hours, but still you can practice it once every 3 months or so. What if I wanted to practice it more often? Because once every 3 months sounds okay, but in some ways you feel that is not enough. What about if you want to practice once a week or at least once a month? Then I think doing 36 hours fasting is good because this is something you can do once a week. Well, after training for a while, it is possible to do it once a week. Or if once a week is too often, then maybe once a month. Or if the 36 hours fasting is too long, then you can practice 24 hours fasting once a week. That is probably more manageable. Now, in my case, I practice 36 hours fast. I do it once a week. I do it every Monday. And then Tuesday to Friday, I have 3 meals, but I try to stay on a plant-based diet as much as possible, except for fish. I usually have fish on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But on the weekend, I include some other animal-based food too. And I don't set any eating windows on the weekend. But Tuesday to Friday, I have a eating windows between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. So this way, I get to practice prolonged fasting once a week, but it doesn't affect protein and fiber that much because it's only one day a week. I can make up for it by eating 3 meals the rest of the week. So in many ways, this is good both for longevity and spirituality, and therefore I think it is the sweet spot. Having said that, it is up to individuals whether you have enough fasting experience or not. I would say start from shorter fast. If you haven't practiced intermittent fasting so much before, do not do 36 hours fast. It's too long. Start from 16 hours fast. In fact, that's how I did it. I practiced 16 hours fasting for 5 days only, not on the weekend, just during the week for about 1 year. Then I started incorporating 24 hours fasting once a week. Then once I get used to practicing 24 hours fasting, I started doing 36 hours fasting once every 3 months or so. Then eventually I switched once a week, 24 hours fasting to 36 hours fasting, and then doing 36 hours fasting once a week became kind of easy things for me to do. So it took me nearly 3 years to prepare myself for that. So, start from shorter fast and gradually get used to longer fasting. But anyway, you need to consult your doctor first. If you're old or if you have any medical condition, it is critical to consult your doctor first. I'm not a medical expert, so I cannot give you any medical advice. So please consult your doctor first. Another thing you can take into consideration when you practice fasting is circadian rhythm, your yearly rhythms. So we have seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, and you can change your fasting regimen based on season. Usually, summertime is warm, so people become more active. Animals and plants, they all become active. So you can practice more exercise in summertime, but in winter, the people become quiet, animals become quiet. Therefore, you can practice more fasting. So you can change your regimen based on seasons too. Now, there's another thing that is the relationship between autophagy and mTOR. What is mTOR? mTOR is the major regulator of growth. This is the opposite of autophagy. When autophagy is on, mTOR is off. And when mTOR is on, autophagy is off. Therefore, if you want to activate autophagy, you want to suppress mTOR. But mTOR is important. You need mTOR too. There are times you want to activate mTOR and suppress autophagy. But I want to go into detail of those two today because it's a little complicated. It takes a long time to explain. So for details, please read my book. In the chapter about fasting, I talk about it in details too. And you want to read this book anyway because it covers other important aspects for increasing your health span, such as diet, exercise, sleep, heat and cold exposure, and brain optimization. Please read this book during your holidays. Prepare for next year. Now, I said both protein and fiber are important for your breakfast. That makes you wonder what type of breakfast you should have. Also, I said I stay on a plant-based diet as much as possible during the week. What does it mean? So to understand your fasting protocol, you need to understand about your diet because what you will eat will influence what type of fasting you will practice as well. So in the next video, I'll talk about diet. If I started optimizing my diet in 2025, I would do this. Okay, thank you for watching. Again, my name is Hachiaki Takamiya, the author of Live Wiser, Not Smarter. If you like this video, please give me your thumb up and subscribe to my channel. And please leave your comment. What kind of fasting have you practiced? And what kind of fasting will you practice in 2025? Thank you. Well, I will see you in the next video. Live with your Ikigai!